All right, coming in at number 8 on our Locked On Senators NHL draft rankings, the tallest player in the draft, standing 6'7". It's Anton Silayev, playing in the KHL for Torpedo.
Yeah, Ross, anytime you have a guy with the size and the pro experience that Silyev has, it's very tempting to take a swing on that. And I think obviously when you see a player like Silyev, you're looking at it and you're saying 6'7", 207 pounds, defenseman, he's huge, pro experience. That's the things that pop out to you if you're just looking at the dimensions and counting numbers, which I guess I'll go through that now, Ross, before I get to this. In the KHL, he had 63 games, 3 goals, 8 assists, good for 11 points. And then in the KHL playoffs, in 5 games, he had 2 assists. And he finished off the year in the MHL playoffs, where in 10 games, he had 3 assists. So you start looking at this and you think, okay, this can be a really good shutdown, mean physical defenseman. But where Silyev really shines, Ross, is his skating. Now, you might think I'm setting this up to be like, at 6'7", he skates well for his size. Nuh-uh. Scratch the last part of that sentence. Silyev skates well in general. I mean, this guy flies out there, and EP, they gave him a lot of recognition here. They awarded him the best shutdown defenseman, so he is a shutdown guy, and neutral zone defender, second best straight line skater. So for a 6'7" guy, Ross, to be the second best straight line skater in this draft, that's pretty incredible. Third best four-way mobility. So he's not just one of those big guys that once he gets chugging, he's fast. This guy can move in all directions, kind of like your queen on a chessboard or king on a chessboard. They got all the mobility that you need. And fourth hardest hitter. A guy that size laying out hits like that. There's so much to like about Silyev when you start to look into his profile, and then you add on a full season of pro, and not even just pro, but KHL experience. Tempting prospect.
And not only that, earlier on in the season in the KHL, this 6'7", 211-pound defenseman was offensively putting up crazy numbers. It was just impossible to ignore when you saw in the first 4 games, he had 4 assists and then had a goal and an assist in his 6th game of the season. He was a point per game, had more than half of the points in his entire KHL season, where he played 63 games. He had more than half of those points in the first 6 games. So throughout the second half of the season, scouts really hoped to see that continue, but instead, his offensive game went more underdeveloped, but at the expense of the offense, he really proved how solid he was on the back end. EP gives him on the 1 to 9 scale an 8 in physicality. They've got him as shades of Nikita Zadorov, who we know is a mutant in the NHL level. Now, here's the catch, because that's the real thing. What's the catch? This guy skates great. He's 6'7". He's physical. He's mean. He has the most points by a U18 KHLer since Vladimir Tarasenko and Evgeny Kuznetsov. You're like, what the heck's going on? He's putting up like only Alex Ovechkin's ahead of him for U18 scoring in some cases. Although I think that was the Super League. So it's a little different league officially, but he still played pro Russia. You get what I'm saying? The offense just disappeared after that. So despite being able to say he's in that echelon, I think what's most impressive and why he was able to even put up this many points, despite not running a power play or anything like that, is that he's playing more than 20 minutes a night in the playoffs for the Torpedo. Like, this is an unheard of prospect where he's that far matured. He's an April birthday. He's only turning 19 in April after this upcoming season. The other catch, Bills, is when the heck are we going to see him in North America, because he's still signed in the KHL. So we don't know when he's going to be able to get out of that contract, which according to EP, his current deal runs until the end of 2026.
Yeah, that's definitely tough. And I mean, it's not like he's a guy that's actively contributing to a top 4 in the KHL. He's not one of those prospects where they're just a big name and they want to shelter him. Torpedo's actually like, no, this is one of our big players. We need him. So that'll be hard to pry him out of there. Ross, you mentioned all those things that make him such a unique player. In EP's draft guide, I should go back and count it, but the amount of time scouts and their scouts, EP scouts, use the word unicorn. It was more than 10 times. Like everyone's saying, this is a unicorn type player. You don't find these guys that can skate this well and that have pro experience at this size like you do with Silayev here. So that we've mentioned only positive things right now, except other than the Russia factor, which could be viewed as a negative for sure. Here's where there's some concerns, Ross, and maybe, yeah, I guess red flags is fair. The hockey sense, the decision making, and the puck handling. There's some work to be done here. And even David St. Louis mentions he applauds how good of a skater Silayev is, but sometimes the routes that he decides to take aren't exactly the most efficient, and he gets lost out there and loses his coverage because he's not taking the best path to get somewhere, even though he is a good skater and that can make up for it. So it's tough too, Ross, when a lot of these knocks on this guy, you could look at it and be like, well, if he played a full season in the MHL, you wouldn't see the stick handling, the skating route decisions, and those types of things. You wouldn't see that as a glaring issue because he would be among lesser competition and he'd probably be dominating a step ahead of these guys anyway. So it's one thing to see it in the KHL and be concerned about it. But at the same time, you got to think he's so young. Once he gets a little more time to mature in a pro league rather than being a rookie defenseman, you're going to see a lot of these things improve over time.
He's one of the guys where if he goes early, he could have a tough time of living up to that draft slot.
Yep.
But if he goes at 10,
yeah,
there could be 8 teams that are like, what the heck did we pass on this guy? He's Victor Hedman. So I just think that he is the wild card of the top 10. Where Anton Silayev goes is going to throw the biggest wrench. I'm including Demidov because think about it. There's so many other good defensemen. If you're going to take a swing on him, you're passing on Zeev Buim. You're passing on Sam Dickinson, potentially. I mean, the earlier teams would if he does go that high. It's going to be fascinating, that tier of 6 defensemen. Silayev, Yakimchuk, Zeev Buim, Artyom Levshunov, Sam Dickinson, and Zane Parekh. Those defensemen, order them however you'd like. None of them has the raw potential of Anton Silayev being 6'7" and skating the way he does. Nobody has that potential that they could be that physical of a force come playoff time. But also, there's not many that have the bust potential that Silayev does. If it just doesn't work out, he could potentially, I don't think it's the case, but you could see Craig Button 16th on his list. EP has him at 12, whereas Bob McKenzie has him at 3, which means NHL teams love him. Fascinating prospect. He's going to be around 9 or 10 for me, but I still think he's a heck of a prospect. And if he falls out of the top 10, it's a slam dunk pick. Once you hit 11, I think you have to start looking at Anton Silayev. What do you have for a Sens stars for Silayev?
Yeah, I think, Ross, especially you look at EP's scout chatter, a lot of scouts love him. Like they're comparing him to Victor Hedman. Like a lot of scouts are like, we'd be nuts to pass on this guy. Having said that, I got him at 4 out of 5 stars for the Sens. I get nervous about drafting big defensemen. If there wasn't the crop of other 5 guys that you mentioned, Ross, in this area for the Sens, I think maybe I would have him at least at a 4.5 stars out of 5. But I like those other guys so much more, and I like their floor a little bit more than Silayev's. But I feel like it's cliche. We say this a lot, but I do mean it here. If your team just drafted Silayev, you should get excited. Like, I think there's such potential here when you have a guy his size that skates this well. He could be a big deal. So although I don't think the Sens are the right pick for him, I do see the potential here. Ross, I put in my notes, I feel like a team that already has a safe, low upside, blue chip defensive prospect could take a swing on this guy. Like if you already have a guy where you're like, we have a
think of him and Sanderson. Think of him and Sanderson. One of them's on the ice all game.
Yeah, no, that's a fair point. I mean, I guess I was thinking more prospect. Sanderson, I've already graduated, but that's a fair point. Sandy's still really young. But that's where you could have a safety net if this doesn't work out. And then if it does, whew, you're laughing. Like I think, Ross, of Utah. Like, imagine they get Silayev and
Simashev.
Thank you. I was really high on him. Two of the best skating Russian defensemen in their system. Oh my God.
Yeah,
Whew.
if the Sens take him at 7, I'm going to convince myself he was best player available because the
I wouldn't
tools
hate
are
it. Yeah, I
all
wouldn't hate
there,
it.
and he's right in that range. Yeah, I think if I'm looking at your list, right, you've got him at 10. I have him at 11 right now, and
Yep.
that could easily change before the draft. And you can find all of our draft profiles on YouTube. Locked On Senators. Anton Silayev comes in at 8 with an average rank of 8 on our Locked On Senators draft rankings.